It all started with a very simple idea. Tell the stories of how successful middle market CEOs made it to the corner office. I'm Brant Handley, founder and managing director of Resource Options International, or ROI. We're the USA's premier executive search firm focused exclusively on empowering middle market companies to attract, hire, and retain A players while transforming top executives' careers and lives. ROI's Into the Corner office is dedicated to discovering how middle market CEOs advance their career, and we're making these remarkable and sometimes quite unbelievable stories available to you for the very first time. Listen and learn about the challenges they've overcome, the interesting people they've met along the way, and the lessons learned that steered these executives' unique journey into a middle market corner office of their own. I know you enjoy these CEO stories as much as I've enjoyed recording them. So thank you for listening today. And if you like what you've heard, rate us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm looking forward to you joining me on the next great middle market CEO adventure into the corner office. Today, my guest is Avi Kahn. Avi leads Hilti's North American operations as President and Chief Executive Officer. He oversees business units in the United States, Canada, the Caribbean, and Guam. He joined Hilti back in 2004 as a territory sales rep for construction in San Francisco. From there, he was promoted to regional manager for San Diego and Hawaii, and in 2008, Avi took on greater responsibility as the Chicago-based West Great Lakes Division Manager. In January 2011, Avi took on an international assignment when the organization named him President of Hilti Canada. Avi Kahn, welcome into the corner office.
Thank you for having me. It's great to be on your podcast.
It's wonderful to have you here. And you know, this is so unique. As we spoke about a month or so ago when we first talked about it, I think you're the very first CEO that I've had that's come in at kind of a territory sales rep level, which was pretty much, I suppose, entry level in the sales organization, and made it all the way to CEO within 15 years. So first of all, congratulations on that. And we'll spend a little bit of time understanding that because it's so unique and so wonderful to see that today. Not too many folks stay as long as you have, and certainly, you know, really kind of start at those very entry levels and make it all the way to the top. So very, very interesting to tell your story, or hear your story rather. But what we like to start with is kind of the early years. Tell us a little bit about growing up and, you know, what your early family life was like.
Sure. So originally I'm from Israel. That's where right. I grew up as the second of 7 children.
Wow.
So definitely a very dynamic
big family.
household, very big family. Very proud of all my brothers and sisters. All have gone on to graduate at least from college, most of them more, and doing very well in their respective fields. Did
your family immigrate entirely to the U.S., or did you come later in life?
Yeah, it's a kind of an interesting story because my grandparents immigrated to the United States from Europe. My father was born here. Right. He moved to Israel in the early 70s. And then that's where we all grew up. But later on in life, I left on my own and came over here.
Yeah. Did your undergraduate studies, I think, here as well, if I recall from your bio?
Yeah, I did my undergraduate studies in Israel and my MBA here in the United States. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, going back to those early years, what were some of the, key inspirations or the folks that maybe influenced you most as you were growing up, particularly being one of the oldest of the family?
Yeah, being the second oldest of 7, everybody had to pitch in. Everybody had to help and assume their responsibility also for the younger siblings, which I actually enjoyed. And through high school, I actually made a little bit of money. One of my first jobs was babysitting for other families that saw me communicate and work with my younger brothers and sisters. It was always assumed and expected that you would devote yourself to your schooling and continue on to college and to university. And that's a lot of credit to my parents, but also grandparents. And I would say my father was a lawyer, had his own practice, his own office. So also watching that responsibility of providing for such a large family also very much shaped my experiences.
Well, I'm sure you've learned a lot about teamwork too. I know how much of a community Hilti North America is in the research that I've done. It sounded like, you were certainly one of the captains or the co-captains.
Yeah, definitely. I enjoyed watching my dad at work and even helping him with some office work through the summers. But it was a great opportunity and a great experience to step up and be part of that household.
Right. Dad was a professional. Mom worked at home and took care of the children?
She did in the early years, and then as we grew up and were able to help, she went back to school to complete her degree and then started to develop her own professional career. I wish I could say that links to my work in diversity and inclusion today, but I did have a lot of respect for that tenacity after raising 7 kids to go back to school and then start to develop a career again.
What a role model. That's fabulous. Must have been a good role model for a lot of your sisters as well, too.
Yeah, absolutely. I have 3 sisters, all with moms that balance also professional career, and she was a very, very strong role model to them.
Now, have they all remained in Israel? Are you the only one that came over, or is it kind of a mixed bag?
It's a mixed bag. I have a sister that followed me to Dallas. It's certainly a thriving region with a lot of opportunities, and having a family member here, I think, helped her make that decision. And then I have a brother that lives in the UK, but the rest of the family is still back there.
It's still there. Yeah. So growing up in Israel, were you a good student?
I would say I was a good student in the subjects that piqued my interest.
A very common response, I might add.
And not in all areas. And I definitely could have done a better job making the teacher's life easier, but I got through.
What were the areas that were of most interest to you growing up in school?
I very much enjoyed, especially in high school, topics like sociology, psychology that I chose to major in. I found them very interesting. I loved history. I still do. So those were topics that I was more naturally drawn to.
Yeah, awesome. And what kind of things outside of class, other than babysitting, and we'll get into some of your other entrepreneurial areas, were you involved in sports, music, theater?
Yeah, I was always very involved in sports, both myself actively as a player, unfortunately a shorter career than I would have liked, but still very active today. And then also very much as a fan. From a young age, I still remember my dad took me to my first basketball game. That was my early passion. Later on, moving here, also got into other sports like hockey and football. So I very much enjoy sports. Also, I have 2 sons, so it's a great way to bond with them and to do stuff as a family.
Absolutely. And you mentioned babysitting. Any other kind of entrepreneurial things you were doing when you were growing up to earn some pocket money?
Yeah, so I did that to try and earn some money through school, but no, I couldn't say that I was one of these guys that had their first lemonade stand at 8 and they went national as a franchise by the age of 12. That really
or had the paper route.
Yeah,
probably not too many paper routes in Israel in those days.
Well, actually, it's interesting you mention a paper route because selling newspaper subscriptions was my first sales job.
Excellent.
I was quite successful in that, and that's what I think opened my mind into a potential career in sales.
Yeah. Was that during high school or your college years?
Yeah, it was through high school or the final year of high school.
Fantastic.
And before going into my mandatory military service. There was actually some training provided, which was very helpful.
That's great.
And the key thing that stuck with me from that training is to ask questions. And that's simply what I did. Engage people, ask them, do you read the paper every day, which today sounds very antiquated, and would you like to get it delivered to your front door, which was, we all know about paper routes, but in Israel at that time, it was relatively a new concept of newspaper delivery. And I realized very quickly that if you sit behind the desk that was provided with the sales booth, you weren't going to sell too many subscriptions. But if you engage people in that conversation, the more no's I got, the closer I got to the yeses.
That's right.
And by the end of that day, when I turned in the subscriptions I was able to secure, the supervisor for that area told me that I had sold more in my first day than anybody has ever done in one day. So it really gave me the confidence that maybe this is something I could look into. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it wasn't a door-to-door type of cold calling. It was a booth somewhere?
Actually, it was a combination. So the first day was in a booth because they were happy with my results and they offered me to stay on. Some of the sales were door-to-door. It's a little bit more tricky because you're interrupting people in their personal times and dinners and such. And so you have to be very polite, very respectful, and accept that that's a very low hit rate.
Right, sure.
But I was also successful with that. Just the hit rate, the success rate is a little bit different.
Well, the art of cold calling, I think hopefully will never die because it really is at the heart of good prospecting, isn't it? Did you learn quite a bit about that?
Absolutely. I learned about it firsthand that if people perceived that you had something that they want, if they were really intrigued by the idea of getting the paper delivered to their house, they would interrupt their dinner. They would stop what they were doing to talk to you. If they weren't interested, they could be totally alone and bored, and they still didn't want to talk to you. And I try to reflect on that also today at Hilti. We truly have something to offer to our customers because they're all concerned with the safety and productivity of their crews on job sites. So even when we're cold calling, even when we take them away from their task that they have on hand that they're doing, we truly can create more value for them if we are allowed the opportunity to get to know them and understand their needs.
Yeah, awesome. So you mentioned you did your undergraduate in Israel and then came here for your graduate work. Were there a lot of choices with regards to where to go to college in Israel at the time?
Yeah. It's a country where many people, a huge percentage of the population invests in their education and continues on. So you have public schools, you have private schools. I decided to get a business degree, thinking about a potential career in sales and in marketing. Initially, I was going to major in marketing, but this is the early 2000s, so everybody is consumed by the dot-com boom. So I decided to go for concentration in information technologies. I never leveraged it in my career, so I didn't really go and work for a tech company. But I have zero regret doing that because I have a lot of appreciation for our IT teams, for our software teams, reflecting on the cycle that it takes to develop a system, what's required. I have a basic understanding, and that helps me also in my role today.
Right. Also teaches you logic, right? And how to think through problems. Did you find that was helpful in that?
Absolutely. A logic and that any demand, any request can be put into a process and a flow.
Right.
And you can then dissect the problem in a way that's manageable. You can't design a system without beginning with the end in mind.
That's right.
But then you have to break it down to the various pieces.
Yeah, awesome. So came immediately to the U.S. after you finished your undergrad, or did you work for a bit before you came over?
Yeah, actually started in a sales job almost immediately after finishing my military service, and then combined that with going full-time to school. So I spent 5 years in a combination of a couple of years as a sales representative and the rest of the time as a sales manager, working for a very small organization of about 30 people and managing a small sales team of 4.
That was Texma Chemicals?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right. I've seen that in your background. So then it was after that, then you left and came to study in the U.S.?
Exactly.
What was the motivation around that?
Yeah, while going to school, I went to a private school in Israel called the IDC, the Interdisciplinary Center. They have a partnership with the Leah Iacocca Institute at Lehigh University in Pennsylvania. And so I spent the summer there at a program called the Global Village. It runs to this day. Every summer it brings together about 100 students from dozens of countries around the world.
Nice.
And it was very eye-opening. I wanted to test and see, could I operate in the United States in an international setting, and how would I fit in? And it was a very successful experience. An added bonus was that that's where I met my wife, and her name is Marianne. She's originally from Canada. About was a pretty major motivation
I would say.
to move over.
To come to North America, right?
Yeah, so we spent a little bit of time in Calgary, Alberta, where she's from, and then we moved to San Francisco, California, where I started my first sales job.
Yeah. So do you remember the first time you started managing people? I'm assuming it was at Texma, correct, in Israel?
It was in Israel. Yeah, it was a very small team. To be honest with you, my reflections on that time only came when I became a regional manager in Hilti. I moved to San Diego from San Francisco to take on that role, and immediately was enrolled in the leadership classes that Hilti offers. Foundations of Sales Management. It's a week-long class for new managers, selecting the right people, which helps you with interviewing and how to create the right atmosphere for people. Leading for Results, which is all about building performance plans, and a variety of others. It's only then that I realized in my previous job, in a company that I'm very grateful for, gave me my first professional opportunity and my first leadership opportunity, I had to lead a lot based on intuition. And my intuition wasn't always wrong, but at Hilti, what's so great when you get a leadership experience with a company like us is it's coupled with all the training and support you need to be successful in the leadership role. And that's when I realized I actually lacked some fundamentals. I can give you one quick example.
Yeah, please do.
I used to interview people with the mindset that your resume in front of me probably does not entirely reflect reality, and maybe you rounded a couple of corners. So I dedicated a lot of the interview into trying to get to the truth. And when I came to Hilti, I realized that an interview is an exercise in trying to tell the future. And while none of us have a crystal ball, we try to look at what did you do in the past? How did you tackle certain problem? What was the context? What action did you do? What result did it lead to? Did you display learning agility? Did you display passion for result and ability to develop people? And with that, how great could you be one day if you joined our organization? And that was a fundamental shift for me in the way I interviewed and approached recruiting. I know that's a topic that's very close to your heart.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, that's a wonderful perspective, and that's a good thing to learn early on. I'm sure it's helped you in your career as you've built out your teams.
Yeah, especially nowadays when I try to attract executives into the organization or even at lower levels, people have options today. The unemployment is low.
It's a very tight job market,
I don't need to tell you.
Oh, no.
And as much as we're evaluating them and trying to figure out are they the right people to join our organization? They're evaluating us. And
more so than ever.
We judge our leaders on also the ability to attract talent into the organization. And for that, you need to be an effective interviewer.
Yeah, absolutely. Thinking about those early days, Texma as well as Hilti, what were some of the leadership lessons you learned from bosses and mentors? And, it could be good, it could be bad. No names need to be mentioned. But for obvious reasons, sometimes some of those examples of poor behavior are some of the long lasting. I know that's been my case.
Yeah, that's very true. I will say very openly that I learned more about what not to do. Working for others, it's a wonderful opportunity to watch and observe and see behaviors that you like and intend to repeat. But when you have negative experiences, I actually think that negative experiences as a team member at whatever level are just as critical, just as important, because they remind you what not to do when people report to you. One early lesson for me was that managing people in the way you want to be managed is not always effective. Perhaps
Absolutely.
you're an individual.
Yeah,
exactly. So perhaps you're a person that appreciates brutal facts and just honesty. Or you're a person that appreciates very close contact with whoever they report to. That doesn't mean that everybody else appreciates it either. To me, leadership is simply about understanding that the world is bigger than you. And it doesn't matter if you have 3 people working for you or 30,000. And when, as a leader, that's not your guiding principle, I think that's extremely clear and extremely apparent. And that's probably the biggest lesson that I've always tried to keep with me.
Yeah, awesome. Any kind of worst lesson you've ever picked up along the way from previous bosses?
Yeah, unfortunately, it'd be the opposite of what I just said. I think when you
You've
put yourself
behavior.
first and not the team and not the organization, I've seen that. I think when you don't realize the power of your team, and that's something I've really tried to do. And one of the things I enjoy in my current role, and also when I was the general manager for Hilti in Canada, is if you have experts that are on your team in their respective fields, logistics, human resources, finance, if you don't leverage them, then shame on you, because they're there because you believe that they know the topic better than you. And if you're always attempting to be more knowledgeable and more into details than them, then I question why you need them. And I really enjoy working with people that know more than me, that are into detail, and then it's my responsibility to ensure their activities fit into our overall goals that we're trying to achieve.
Awesome. Sounds like you don't have to be the smartest guy in the room.
Actually, I believe that you don't want to be the smartest guy in the room.
Good point. Touché.
The son of our founder, Michael Hilti, said once that his goal is always to hire people that are smarter than him.
Yeah.
Otherwise, why would he need to pay them? He can just do the job himself. So, I'm happy to say that I'm seldom the smartest person in the room. We have an extremely talented team that I'm very privileged to work with.
That's awesome. Well, you've been a little over 15 years with Hilti, and we touched on that a little bit in the intro. And as I said, rarely in my podcast have I found someone coming in as a territory sales rep, which I'm assuming was, pretty much an entry-level sales job, was it not?
Yeah, it was an entry-level sales job, and that's where many of our team members start engaging directly with customers, working on job sites.
Awesome. Did you ever think you'd be CEO of Hilti one day?
No. When I'm very privileged to be the region head and CEO for our North American organization. And when I first started, our current region head and CEO at the time used to record messages, phone messages, very similar to podcasts today, with an update on our business.
That would go out to everyone, right?
Yes, on a monthly basis.
Right.
And I would be lying through my teeth if I would say that as I was driving my truck around San Francisco, I was envisioning that one day I'd
doing the same.
Him. Yeah.
Well, that's fabulous. Well, you obviously had a terrific career path, division manager, general manager. Were you mentored along the way? What is kind of the culture with regards to promotion? Is it pretty much from within at Hilti, or was yours kind of a rare case in terms of your advancement?
Yeah, I think that's what's so exciting and so unique here about Hilti. 15 years ago, I made the decision to join almost any other organization. I doubt that today I would be able to say that I'm part of the global executive management team responsible for a business of over $1.5 billion with nearly 4,000 team members. We do promote from within. 90% of our promotions go to internal team members. And
that's great.
As new team members join us every month, as people listening to this may be considering career with Hilti.
Yeah, or have just joined.
Or have just joined us perhaps. We are very serious about promoting from within. We take risks on internal people, as evident with my career path, but then exactly as you asked, we couple it with mentorship, and as I said before, training. We have training at all levels of the organization. Entry level is 2 to 3 months. New regional managers. We're working currently on our director training. We have an introductory program for our new general managers. So every step of the way, you're mentored and coached and supported to ensure the best chances of success. I'm honestly not that unique. Okay, perhaps I went a step or two more than some, but our new general manager that we just appointed for our Canadian market organization started as an engineering intern. Our general manager for our East market organization, our largest market that we have, Mike McGowan is his name, started as a store employee in Washington, D.C., and has built a wonderful career. We have so many examples of that. Now, how far people go depends on their personal situation, their willingness to move and be flexible.
Right.
A lot can be said also just simply for timing in a career development and being at the right place at the right time. But we have excellent internal development stories that we're very proud of.
Well, and it sounds like training is a big part of it. You touched on that a little bit earlier on about some of the training that you had. Is that a very proactive part of your development program internally?
It's a very proactive part of our development program. We bring over 1,400 people into Tulsa, Oklahoma to our operations center every year for training.
Fantastic.
It's a very structured program for the first year of employment, not just the initial period of training, but team members also come back, very focused on leadership development and skills development. Where we feel we need to supplement it from the outside, we do that and get help. Recently with the program we ran for selling to executives. But understanding between a team leader and a team member, what are the development opportunities for that team member, and then coupling that with training and with other experiences is core to our people development processes.
So beyond kind of the onboarding induction phase, training follows the executives, it sounds like, along the way, tailored to their specific needs as they grow?
Exactly, and that's the power of having open development discussions that allow jointly to assess where are those development needs and what will it require for that team member to continue to be successful in their current job or prepare for a future job if that's their aspiration.
You know, and unfortunately, so much of that's been lost. It's wonderful to see it at Hilti. I grew up in a company, Procter & Gamble, which I'm sure you know, where in those days it was also promote from within. I never had a boss that hadn't been, in the job before me, and those that worked along the way. And they as well had a very consistent, every step of the way training and development program. And, you just don't see a lot of that these days. So I really want to commend you. Is that a global objective with Hilti, or is that unique to North America?
Oh, it's certainly global. We are part of the Hilti Group, and we follow those people processes that we have around the world. We have never had a CEO or an executive board member or an executive management team member that have not been promoted from within, also on a global level. Of course, we supplement the excellent internal development with a very targeted, very specific senior recruiting from the outside.
Sure.
But once we bring them in, we never hire them just for that first job. Also with senior people that join us, we look to see how can we build that into a long-term career together.
How do you kind of interview against culture? Because you have a very unique one. Do you do that personally? Do you rely on others in your organization? Do you have a filter at which you can kind of determine the type of people that are going to fit the Hilti North American culture?
Yeah, we do have a very, very unique, very strong culture that started with the family, and they're still a huge supporter. As the sole owner of the company, the Hilti Family Trust is our sole owner, and the Hilti family is very keen on preserving our corporate culture. Our interview processes are fairly structured with clear guides and predefined questions. Questions about the culture are very prominent in there. We have 4 core values: teamwork, courage, commitment, and integrity. And we certainly check for them with experiences, with how did you deal with the situation where perhaps your values were questioned? How important is it for you to work for an organization with clear values? Questions along those lines allow us to check for that and to make sure for the team member that this is an environment where
they'll thrive in.
It feels right for them, they fit in, and that they can thrive.
Yeah, that's awesome. And you said family owned. What generation is the trust now in terms of the family members? Is it second, third, fourth, fifth?
Yeah, we're already into the third generation.
Third generation.
We're very proud of that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think the numbers are only 33% of companies make it from first to second. 13 from second to third. I think it's 3% beyond that. So that's quite a unique opportunity. And where is the company headquartered overall? Is it North America or is it outside?
So the company is headquartered in Liechtenstein. That's where the Hilti family is from. That's where the company was founded 78 years ago. And our headquarters is there still to this day, a very important part of our group, where core functions reside, where R&D, the majority of research and development activities take place, and where the majority of the management team also resides. We're very proud of the fact that we're into the third generation, but we don't see that stopping. The family trust, it's a very unique setup that we have for ownership, is tasked with ensuring the longevity and sustainability of the Hilti Group. That's the main goal. And so with that in mind, there's a really strong belief and feeling that the organization will continue to thrive for generations to come.
That's awesome. Terrific. Well, kind of back to you a little bit, and thank you so much. It's great to learn more about Hilti, and those that are listening, I'm sure will be looking you up and learning more about the company and the culture. Fantastic organization. Tell us a little bit about how your leadership evolved over time, Avi.
I think leadership, to me, as I said before, I don't think titles and scope matter so much. But one thing that does evolve over time, as you start to manage more and more senior people, I really had to evolve and learn to do a better job of empowering people, in enabling them, and seeing my role more as setting the long-term direction, making sure they have the resources they need to be successful, aligning and checking with them that their activities together with their team are also aligned to what we're trying to do. But when you're managing first-line employees, they're very happy if you're heavily involved in their work and enabling their success. You have to adjust as you move on. I also had to evolve in understanding that you really have to focus your efforts in the areas that really matter. As your teams that you manage become larger and more complex, you can't be involved in every decision. You can't work on everything. Your word has more meaning, but you have limited interactions. So those limited interactions with the team members really need to matter and need to be focused on the areas that you're trying to make a difference. And I would say the last one that I would mention where I think my leadership style has evolved is partnering with Catalyst and going through the MARC, Men Advocating Real Change experience for diversity, has really caused me to change my approach over the last 4 or 5 years to diversity and inclusion.
Oh, that's awesome. So was that an outside program you were involved with, or it was an internal?
Yeah, it was an outside program. Catalyst is the leading non-for-profit that's invested into promoting women and especially women of color in the workplace. And the MARC experience is about exposing men to the opportunities that they have as leaders to advance women in the workplaess.
That's awesome. With and that, that's M-A-R-C or M-A-R-K?
Oh, MARC, M-A-R-C, Men Advocating Real Change. It's. I can say I signed up as a Champion for Change CEO, and if anybody looks that up online, I'm humbled to be with a wonderful group of CEOs, true leaders in the industry, some real household names that many people recognize that have signed up to support this initiative. It also taught me a lot about inclusion and how to be a more inclusive leader as well.
Right. Awesome. Terrific. Well, MARC and Catalyst, we'll certainly note that for our listeners. A couple more questions. You've been very generous with your time, but I want to just kind of touch on a little bit about, when it's time to micromanage or when to stay out of the sandbox. How do you kind of work with your people?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. To me, there's always two things that dictate that. First and foremost, it's the team member or leader that you're working with. Their development in that given area and their state of mind, for me, dictates a lot the need to step in or not. And the second one is perhaps more obvious. It's the results. So if things are going well, and if the right activities are leading for the right results, there's less of a need to step in.
Stay out of the way.
But when things don't work or not the right activities are in place, I believe that's the right time to start to dig a bit deeper.
Right. Do you have a dashboard? How do you kind of monitor and follow the KPIs or the metrics of your, particularly your top executives and those that report to you?
Yeah, Hilti is a very process-driven organization, and we have many reports from daily to annual reports that are available at any given point in time. To supplement all of that, though, and to put it all together, each of my executives designs their own one page. It's just one page, very short summary every month. What's on track, what's behind, and what requires immediate attention, and what is their next month outlook. So it's a very simple
green, yellow, red.
4-box, green, yellow, red, and what's the outlook, and it allows us to have very effective communications with one another given that the team is not all sitting here with me in Plano, Texas.
Yeah, but you sit down once a month and go through that with them, at least.
Exactly.
Yeah, terrific. Well, last question we ask all our CEOs on the show, Avi. What kind of career and life advice would you give to someone that has their own eyes on the corner office, whether they realize they may make it there or not? We may have a territory sales rep listening to this on the road right now who's working for either your organization or perhaps another. And, what are the kind of things that have really been kind of your true north that's guided you along the way?
Yeah, I think, first of all, because we're an organization that promotes from within, we love team members that are driven and want to achieve. So I never try to curb the enthusiasm of our team members or anybody else listening. I think it's great to be motivated and driven and strive to be the best you can be. I think the first step is to find the right organization where you can do that.
Yeah.
I believe, that's just my opinion, that doing that building a career in a sustainable way with one organization is more effective as you're trying to build a career than moving between organizations. And I think it has to be the right organization that wants to promote from within, that would celebrate that success, that would invest in that particular person and would give them the opportunities to advance. I also believe striking the balance between doing the task at hand, executing your job that you're supposed to do while working on your personal development. We have team members that work extremely hard at their sales or management job and take advantage of our generous educational reimbursement program and get their degree while working for us. Balancing the two is a challenge, but if you're able to do both, you can be successful. We don't advocate just go do your job, because then you'll wake up 3 years later and say, I joined this organization to move on. Why am I still in the same job? But we also don't advocate just always look for the next promotion, because you have to deliver. We look for people that can achieve outstanding results and develop their people. And I think if you balance the two, you can be successful. Last but not least, I am a big believer in hard work. And hard work is, it's the hours, it's the time you give to the job, for sure. But I believe it's just as important to also be in the moment. In the time that you do give to your job, however many hours, however many days a week, be in the moment during that time. Engage with people, focus on the conversation. Don't let your mind wander. Don't get distracted, and then you can be successful.
Avi Kahn, CEO at Hilti North America, thank you so much for sharing your journey into the corner office.
It was my pleasure. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
Thank you for listening to Into the Corner Office with Brant Hanley. We hope you enjoyed hearing our guest CEO story as much as we did. If you want to hear more CEOs reveal their journey into the corner office, please subscribe via iTunes and tell your friends and colleagues. For more information about Brant, Resource Options International, and the mighty middle market, visit www.goforroi.com. We look forward to having you join us for our next episode.